The air in the National Assembly was thick with tension. Outside, dark clouds rolled over Cape Town, casting long shadows over the steps of Parliament. Inside, silence had fallen over the chamber, not out of respect, but out of sheer disbelief. This was not an ordinary session. This was not politics as usual. This was Zille versus Ramaphosa, and the entire nation was about to witness a showdown that would echo through the corridors of South African political history. It began like any other heated debate session, with MPs slinging barbed questions and government officials responding with well-worn rhetoric. But what started as a parliamentary Q&A turned into a full-blown confrontation when Democratic Alliance Federal Council Chairperson Helen Zille took the floor. She stood tall, firm, and ready. Across from her sat President Cyril Ramaphosa, arms folded, eyes locked on the seasoned political adversary. "Mr. President," she said, voice rising like a tide, "the people of South Africa are not fools. They know when they're being lied to. Load shedding, unemployment, crime, and corruption, these are not just statistics. These are the everyday nightmares of millions. And what do we get in return? Smiles and promises. No action. No accountability. No future." Gasps echoed across the room. Ramaphosa leaned forward, visibly unsettled. This wasn't just a critique, it was a direct challenge to his credibility, his leadership, and the very legacy he hoped to leave behind. For a moment, the chamber was still. Then, Ramaphosa responded, not with silence, but with thunder. "Madam Zille," he said, in a tone colder than winter on Table Mountain, "you speak of accountability. But where was accountability during your party's time in the Western Cape when communities cried for water, for housing, for safety? You accuse this government of lies while ignoring the divisions sown by your own. Do not lecture me about leadership when your record bears its own heavy stains." The tension exploded like a spark to dry grass. Members of both parties erupted, some clapping, others shouting over one another. The speaker's gavel pounded again and again. Order! Order! But order had left the room the moment egos and reputations went to war. "Mr. President, we may have our flaws. But we do not preside over a country where whistleblowers are silenced, where public funds are looted in plain sight, where ministers are reshuffled like playing cards while the poor starve. You stand here today defending the indefensible, hiding behind rhetoric while the nation crumbles." It wasn't just political theater, it was a symbolic battle between two towering figures, each representing a vision for South Africa's future. Zille, fierce, unapologetic, deeply critical of ANC's governance. Ramaphosa, measured, defensive, but clearly pushed to the edge of his patience. The chamber had become an arena, and each exchange drew the crowd closer to the edge of their seats. Pundits watching from home immediately dubbed it the most electrifying face-off Parliament had seen in over a decade. Social media platforms lit up with hashtags, #Zille versus Ramaphosa, #Parliament Showdown, and #SA Politics on Fire. Even MPs who usually sat in the shadows found themselves swept up in the chaos. Julius Malema looked amused. John Steenhuisen looked proud. ANC loyalists looked rattled. And somewhere in the public gallery, a visitor whispered, "I came for politics, but this is war." After nearly an hour of fierce back and forth, the speaker suspended the session to restore order and calm. But the damage, or the awakening, had already occurred. What Zille and Ramaphosa had just engaged in was more than a debate. It was a mirror held up to South Africa's fractured political landscape, a landscape shaped by historic wounds, economic betrayal, and deep mistrust between citizen and state. Later that evening, news networks replayed the showdown on a loop. Analysts debated who came out on top. Was it Zille with her sharp, relentless attack? Or Ramaphosa with his firm rebuttals and presidential gravitas? But perhaps the real question wasn't about winners or losers. Perhaps it was about how this moment exposed what many had been feeling but couldn't articulate, that South Africa, in 2025, stands on a dangerous precipice. Trust in leadership is hanging by a thread, and the people are no longer willing to sit silently. As Parliament prepares for its next session, one thing is certain: Zille versus Ramaphosa wasn't just a debate. It was a reckoning. And South Africa is still holding its breath.